It definitely is an honor being with you. There's a deep field of inspiration in which you are already living. And the message that was coming to me most strongly today is really less practical and more about seeding and tilling that soil that you're already in. The workshop, if you choose to stay, will get into practicalities much more specifically. Who has seen the very interesting movie or read the book, The Notebook? It's very popular. It's Nicholas Sparks, right? Do I have that right? Yes. So in that book or in that story, you have a woven continuous theme of an older man reading a story to an older woman, only to discover that they're partners and that he is reading the story of their love to her over and over and over again. Because he knows that if he keeps reading that story, she's going to remember. And maybe that remembering will last longer. But even if it doesn't, it will be lasting for a minute or two or even 3. And what happens each time she remembers? They fly to each other, don't they? There is a falling in such an intimacy that I don't know about you, but it moves me to tears. I don't read novels like that so often. I'm always in these like heady theology. And isn't that the love story that we're in? Where the lover, everyone learned yesterday, I'm a lover archetype. I own it. Doesn't have to be your language. Where the lover is reading the story of our lives within us over and over and over again, so much so that we can claim with confidence it's happening every single moment. And there are moments when we remember. And what happens when we remember? We fall in, don't we? There is a coming home to ourselves that is both the deepest sense of security and landing and the widest sense of feeling boundless. We penetrate that paradox of who and what we are. This message is focusing a bit on that, and I want to start with a poem that expresses that. It was when I was in a honeymoon period with the divine in 1989, and this poem I wrote many years later. And I was on fire with love. I knew you as I danced wildly in the woods. You were consuming me. You revealed yourself, all-consuming fire. And the eyes that marveled at the elegance of the night, with all of its trees and blades of grass reflecting the moon, were yours. I was basking in the divine gaze within me, beholding its creation. A moment of falling in. May we fall in with every ounce of abandon that is possible today in some new way. And there are so many words that can offer opportunities to support us in this process. There are modes and methods and techniques, all so valuable. And I want to offer you a grounded perspective today, coming from a mystic theologian that I have a lot of respect for. I'm not claiming it to be the be-all, end-all. And even as I share these thoughts, just like I said yesterday, I don't want you to look at me and say, wow, what she said is true. What I hope for you is you will say, wow, is what she's saying true for me? Let it be an occasion for a direct experience so that the truth of your being can reveal to you what you are here to remember. I'm the symbol of that, or the occasion for that, or the container for that. And I understand from the Mystic series that you had the joy, if you did, participating with Gordon, that this mystic theologian was one of your points of focus. I'm going to draw upon the work of Teilhard de Chardin. So raise your hand if you have any familiarity with that mystic theologian. Like all mystics, his life, his very life, as he was true to the truth that was unveiling itself within him, followed that path. He was a pioneer of a new level of knowing. And in that, he was silenced, he was exiled. His works still are not fully accepted in the tradition in which he lived, and yet still seed the field of our knowing, so much so that he is boundless and not so contained within one tradition anymore. Hence why he could be such a good person to be part of your series, like so many others. Born in 1881, I'll just give you just a little way you can relate to him as a human being. Born in 1881, died in 1955, died at the age of 74. He grew up in France. He was French. And he was not only called to be a Jesuit theologian, but he was also called to be a biopaleontologist. And when he said yes to that call, because of his love of creation and his insatiable curiosity, we have an interesting moment in his life. In the years 1924 to 27, around that time, because of his education to that point, he not only was part of the intimacy of the experience of the discovery of bipedal hominid skull, but he also wrote a very big shake-up document that challenged every ounce of the traditional theology of original sin, because it didn't work. It made no sense to what is revealed of the divine essence in creation. And what happened after that? He was silenced and not allowed to speak of this. I want to read a quote by him, because shortly after that, he's well known for what is a theology called cosmogenesis, which these are fancy words, but words can be fun because they can kind of tickle our curiosity about things. So bear with me if that is fun for you or not fun for you. So I'm going to read this because it's so sophisticated, I don't want to get a word wrong. The human layer of consciousness engulfing our earth is becoming a collective brain and heart that will, in the future, as single-minded persons, detach itself from this planet, ascension in parentheses, transcend space and time, and be immersed in God. He calls it, or it is called, the Omega point. And he says that the end goal of evolution will be singularity of consciousness. And he was so out there that he said, we won't even know what we are. We will be that changed. And how that aligns with inspired words like in the Bible, eye has not seen and ear has not heard. What we are moving into remembering. And in this theology, that he was exiled for, he had an excellent threefold understanding of how we experience the presence of the divine in creation. And that's what I want to share with you today lightly. But before I do, I want to share a story from my own life, because it can be an opportunity for you to take the story of your own life and see how this threefold method that he described plays itself out. So when I was 5 or 6 years old, I was living in Cincinnati. I grew up there till I was 11. And I was a total geek. I loved school so much that I would push my teachers to give me books to study through the summer and try to coerce all my friends to practice with me, which they would do up until they realized I really wanted to learn. Like, we weren't playing school, we were actually going to do school, and they're like, yeah, no. But also, school always coincided with the autumn season. The brilliance of summer moving into that notable change. I know you even know it here, because I even knew it when I lived in Florida. Well, in Cincinnati, it was remarkable. It was the typical Midwest where all the leaves would change in bright colors, where the temperature of the air would drop just enough where you're like, oh, that's it. I'm ushered into the change. And you could feel a little like the wind would pick up just a little bit. Everything was in movement, and everything as a little girl spoke to me. Now, back then, we walked to and from school very safely, and I don't remember my parents ever seeing me off in the morning. I think I even made my own lunch. It was that laid back. And I would love to walk home alone. And one of these days, I was walking home alone. There was a particular way that nature lit up. And I could feel within my very body that it was dancing, that all nature was dancing. And what did I do as a little girl? I danced. I had to be part of the dance. I had to move my body. Now, I lived in a very Catholic part of the world, but now I know what I was doing is I was Sufi whirling. I was whirling all the way home, because that's the only thing that felt the expression of what I was experiencing nature to be doing at the moment. And as I was whirling my way home, I was taken more and more into this state we might call bliss, where everything was just falling away and the joy was undeniable. And I got to the end of my cul-de-sac and I stopped and I just exhaled. So I was kind of a little bit, I wasn't in my body, but not my body. And I was just taking it in. And across the cul-de-sac, there was a tree that was just lit up. And it seemed like in the way that it was lit up, it was like pulling me to it. I mean, my gaze became riveted on that tree. Without any expectation, my mind was quiet. And right as that happened, there was one leaf on that tree that lit up even more, which pulled my gaze right into it. And that leaf was doing its own little dance on the branch. And I just was feeling, I wasn't moving my body, but I was feeling like I was the leaf. And it was moving like this. And then unexpectedly, the leaf broke off the branch and descended towards the ground. And completely unsolicited, from somewhere deep within me, this fear rose up, this anguish. It was kind of an anguish, probably more than a fear. Is that it? We're just here to die? It wasn't my mind. There was something deeply existential that was caught in the descent of that leaf. And in the very moment, because I'm giving words, we've all had those experiences that are so wordless, and then you put a lot of words to it and makes it a story. But the story even falls short. Immediately, it was like the beloved didn't want me to suffer for just a moment. As that rose up within me, time stopped, And it felt viscerally like these veils pulled back, and I moved into a vortex. And I had this direct experience that the leaf was in God and God was in the leaf. And without making a mental jump, there was the grasp that I am in God and God is in me. And that life has no beginning or end, but is being and becoming at the same time. And it washed any existential concern away in that moment and formed a cosmology for me that to this day is still unveiling itself, is still revealing its nuances and its diversity and its distinctions, still alluring me like the beloved does, drawing me on. And it offers a grounded story for this threefold method that Desjardins gives to us that I think you will find can have relevance from a perspective standpoint in your own life. The first part of that is all creation is about God. He says it's third person. It's the transpersonal, non-theistic I am of being. That would be those moments that we say, nature is screaming out the presence of God. There's something so transpersonal about it, and at the same time, something so intimate about it. He said that's one way that the divine is expressing itself as creation, revealing itself to us. The second is all creation is we space. That is the personal, the interpersonal, the theistic, the relational, the energetic dance of relation that can express itself and excite the experience of the presence of God within ourselves and all else. And the third is the I space. So we've got the it, the we, and the I space. And the I space is the immanent. It is entirely subjective. We've been taught to kind of hold subjective suspiciously. Oh, that's just subjective. That's not real. And yet in his method, the subjective is the deeply mystical. It is the moment when we experience from the very fiber of our being that we lose the self-reference and we are the light of the world. We don't know we're the light of the world. We are the light of the world. And he said, all creation is singing this song, this threefold experience of the divine. And I would say that as in my experience in ministry and as somebody of the Western culture, that probably our biggest challenge is with the second one. Might you agree that the we, where we get the theism, why? Because theistic methodologies have so often erred in their sophistication and created a dualism that there is a God source that is outside in some way. And it adds to it that there is a certain unworthiness in that which is outside the entirety of the God source. But what Desjardins does is he redeems it. He pulls it back. He's like, there's something quite vital about recognizing that the awakening into the divinity of our being is also highly relational. And we can dissolve, well, we can heal, right? There's deep woundedness there. We can dissolve and heal the fragmented ways that we look at that second way, so that we can recover the capacity to be in our world relationally and discover that I see God in you. And that then inspires the experience of myself as God. We can find the immanent and the transcendent are both one and the same. Now, Desjardins wrote The Phenomena of Man, which contains a hearty treatment of his core theologies in about 1938. So he'd been silenced, he'd been in China, he was intimate with the Peking man discovery. He was very excited being part of this understanding of the evolutionary process. And in 1955, he kept asking if he could come back to France. He'd be hired to speak somewhere, and then the judge would say, nope, sorry, we don't think that's going to be possible. And his own order would cut off that contract and silence him again. And they said, why don't you just stay in New York? You know, nice to have you over there. And he died of a heart attack, probably something of a crushed heart. He was very alive, and he seems to evidence coming to a joyful and autonomous and independent place. But just because we come into that level of wholeness doesn't mean that our hearts aren't affected by the humanity in which we live, right? In 1955, when he died, widely it went out that nobody should touch any of his theological works. And it's only in the 1990s that there is a light reference by the Pope at that time, John Paul II, that there are many ways to look at evolution, but never an honest acceptance of the validity of the theological contribution he gives us that can shine a light for us in our journeys, that can help us understand. We're going to go deep into that word of miracle. Miracle is the front and center word in the workshop. But I wanted to seed the land in this understanding of the essence of who and what we are, because it takes that. We have the opportunity to look at ourselves this way so that we open up to ourselves as a continual miracle unfolding in concert in the universe, so that there's no miracle too big and no miracle too small. There are just the miracles of telling the divine story as it's happening through us, the creative expression of God. And I use that word God very broadly. I hope you get that. Please translate if that's not a word that resonates with you. I don't use the word that often myself. So I want to bring this message to its completion with one more story. Now, in the workshop where we're going to draw heartily on some of the fundamentals here, I'm drawing in this talk from some of the deeper messages here, which is my experience, like my story of this essence of love coming from my being. When I experienced that in the leap, and I had a lot of experiences in that time that involved a lot of different setups, ritual, nature, family, there was something that was always illuminating from within me, even though the external was the prompt. The external was the occasion, but it merged quite quickly with the knowing from the internal. It was undeniable when I was 5 or 6 that I was the leaf, and the leaf was me, and God was the leaf, and I was God. And it was just, there was no dispute in my being around that. So I want to share a story that actually could be a little optional homework for you. You could either take the story that I'm going to share with you, or you could take one of your own stories that's similar and see if you can unearth aspects of this threefold process of Desjardins. It can ease your entry into opening to the deeper knowing that's there for you as this unfolding, abundant expression of the boundlessness that we call eternal source, in which we live and move and have our being, in which all manifestation happens. Manifestation is always about transformation. And we had many points yesterday, but one of them was the realization that as you step into the expansion and growth that's stirring within you, that's stoking within you, there is an entire transformation that will happen in that process. It's not just about the known next steps. It is much more largely about the unknown path that you are being drawn upon even more poignantly. So I'm going to share with you a fun monastery story, because everyone likes monastery stories. It's true. Even if you're just curious, like, what happens behind those doors? So I entered the monastery in North Dakota, and I ended up saying yes to a Carmelite path. And the Carmelite charism, longer story about that whole story. I don't want to take the time here. The Carmelite charism is all about being and walking in the presence of God. That's the heart of how the order came together in the 1200s on Mount Carmel. That is the perduring charism. A charism is like the vision statement. I'm alive, I'm part of this group because I'm recognizing a call to embody the presence of God at all times in every way. And it becomes the path in which you learn and grow and what it means to be alive. So in Carmelite monastic life, it is from an external view a very rigorous life. A lot of fasting. We farmed the land, so we ate so healthy. We farmed just about everything you can imagine. We had cows we milked. We made all our own butter, best butter I have ever eaten. And there are layers and layers and layers of schedules and rituals that are complex and very rich because they let you go deep quickly. We have layers of feast days and layers of chants we did and layers of things we did at certain times of the year. We even had weekly schedules that were always revolving. And this story has to do with the weekly schedule. Super simple. You would be the weekly reader at table. We ate in silence. So if you were the reader, you didn't eat with everyone else. You read something inspirational to everyone else as they were eating. Sometimes you would be chosen for a week to lead the chant. You would do the intonation, and everyone else would follow. You would do that for a week. And you would do that at midnight, at 5:30 in the morning, at 9 a.m., 11:15, 1:30, 4:30, and again at 8. We chanted and meditated for 7 to 8 hours a day, including the middle of the night. And one of the duties that was involved in this weekly rotation was something really probably the most basic duty of all, and that was turning on and off the tabernacle light. So we did a lot of processions. We would chant Hebrew psalms, and we would process when we were going to gather, and we would process when we were leaving. And it was really rooting and powerful. And if you had that duty, when you would enter the little chapel, you can imagine you turn the light on. And when you would leave the chapel, you turn the lid off. And the rhythm would go like that. Well, I had just had one of these moments, and I'm sure you can relate. Have you ever had one of these moments when you're you feel a certain level of inspiration, and you're like, take me to the next level. I'm ready. Have you ever had one of those moments? Yes? And then you don't realize what you just said yes to? Well, I was in one of those moments, and it was really consoling, and I was like, I'm here, and I'm young, and I'm zealous. I'm 25 years old, and take me, yes. And of course, what happens is everything starts going haywire. My clock stops working so that when I'm supposed to wake sisters up, I'm always oversleeping, and everything's going nuts for me in my practical part of my monastic life. And I was in tune enough to go, okay, I think this is, I'm recalibrating. I could give a little perspective to it. That's okay. Well, I got the duty of the tabernacle light one week within this period of calibration. And I remember right as the duty started, and we were up at midnight, that was my first first time the duty went into action. And we're processing, and I turn on the tabernacle light, and we're there for like an hour in the chapel, and we're chanting and meditating, and we go to leave, and I forget to turn off the tabernacle light, which I had never done for an entire year. I mean, it's a pretty basic task. Well, nobody does it for you. So in monastic life, because of some of the rules, it's not like somebody looks at, oh, she left on the light, boop, which is what we would do normally, right? Like if you left the lights on here and somebody noticed, somebody would turn them off. Nobody would say, Gordon was supposed to turn those lights off. I better go call him so he can come back here and turn the light off. I mean, that's insanity. But they don't do that in monastic life because it's a duty entrusted to you. And I was a novice, which is spiritual boot camp. So it's an opportunity for me to learn something. So everyone's given a buzz because you're living in silence. So my buzz comes across the intercom through the whole monastery at 1 a.m. And I learn forgot to turn off the light. So I go and I turn off the light. Lauds comes 5:30 in the morning, and we process in, and then we process out. And what do you think happens? I forget to turn off the light. So once again, I get buzzed, and that's going on. And that's okay. Like, I'm young, and I've got energy, and I'm optimistic. I'm like, this is God's lesson. I'm learning humility. So this goes the entire week. And 7 times a day, every single day, I forget to turn off the tabernacle light, which by the end, I was beginning to wane a little bit in my zeal. I was beginning to feel a little self-conscious. So at the end of that week, I make a commitment, and I'm like, all right, I know what you're trying to teach me. I just need to be more present. So I doubled down on presence. I got the duty again, I don't know when, within 6 weeks or so. And I'm like, I'm going to practice presence. I'm going to practice presence. And I was all firm about it. And I get in there, and we're chanting, and we're meditating, and then we're leaving. And then as we go out the door, the nun in front of me bumbles somehow with the doorknob, and the door closes, and I go to grab the door, and that distracts me away from my focus to be really present and not fail. And what do you think happens? I forget the tabernacle light. 7 times a day, every day for the entire week, I forget the tabernacle light, and I'm going, and I'm going to be present. And so my conclusion, which I'm sure you can probably relate to, is like, okay, I haven't learned my lesson yet. So it's not about presence. Maybe it's about, and I'm being very logical about this, maybe it's about determination or commitment. And so the duty comes around again, and I'm like, I'm determined now. I've renewed my focus. And what do you think happens that entire week? Every single time, every single day, I forget the tabernacle light. And I'm like, okay. And see, understand the gap in my logic there. I'm assuming that I can figure out what the lesson is, apply the lesson, and what will happen? I won't fail anymore. So the next time around, I'm like, I know, because you can tell I have a vivacious personality. I'm like, I just need to be more adventurous. Come up with something imaginative that I'm going to remember this tabernacle light. So what I did, which is like the leaders in the community were probably like, what is this woman doing? I went into our novitiate little place where we'd have our classes, and I found a piece of yellow construction paper, and I wrote light in big red letters. And I would walk into the choir holding this sign, and then I would go to my stall, and the stall is right like this, and I've got it right there. I got it like there, and then we have like 13 little chant books, so it's sitting right there. And then I would take my piece of paper and kiss the floor, because we prostrated and kissed the floor a lot, and we would get up there to leave, and I'd be holding my paper like this, and I'd go out the door, and what do you think I did? Yes, that's what happened. Every single time, the entire week. And what was worse was it actually became a joke in our community. So what happens is you get together once a day for 45 minutes to talk. The rest of the day's in silence. You know how hard it was for my heart that I became a joke during the only time I had to bond with these women that I was joining for the rest of my life. At first I could rise into it because I'm not real arrogant by nature. So it wasn't hard for me to laugh along with people at this failing, but it started to wear. As it kept going on and on, my own patience with myself and the situation was beginning to be tried. There came a time during this long series of failures that we, in addition to all the meditation we did together, we also had a private hour of meditation, which is a way we keep vigil for the world throughout the day and night. And I was there for my hour, and I was kneeling there, and for the first time in that entire period, which was probably about 6 months, discouragement showed its face. And it began to rise up within me. And I let it rise. I didn't push it down with an ideology or a zeal or a right way of thinking. I didn't hold on to an affirmation like I was grasping after something. I let the discouragement come up, and I started to cry. I was crying mainly because I felt like I wasn't getting my lesson. I felt like the divine wanted me to know something or learn something, and I was so obtuse that I couldn't get it. And all these different feelings were coming up. And as I was there, guided through inspiration, I just picked up my Bible, and I felt my hands on fire, and I opened it up. And the passage jumped off the page at me. It is a story of Jesus and his friends out in a boat. Or actually, the friends are in the boat, and Jesus approaches them walking on the water. And when the friends see him walking on the water, his one friend, Peter, says, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you and walk on the water." And Peter gets out of the boat and starts walking on the water. And then he becomes concerned about everything around him because there's wind and the water's moving. And where he felt free and was in his God essence, he was walking on the water. But because he wasn't stabilized in that knowing, he was distracted by the elements, and doubt and fear rose, and he began to sink in the water. And that sinking was simultaneously what my own soul was doing. It was the right expression for how I really felt. And as my soul was plunging down, I had this experience. In the passage, it says, Jesus immediately grabbed him. And I had this experience as my soul was moving downward it was like massive, you would want to say angel wings, but it was more like divine essence wings. Went like this around my sense of being, where it was going. And in that moment, awakened within me this knowing, there is nothing that I can do or not do, be or not be, that will ever take me out of the embrace of the divine. It washed me of whatever was caught up in all of that. And in that lightness and coming home to myself, I never forgot the tabernacle light again. The elements are here to awaken within us a remembering of who and what we are. And we become, in the transformation, an embodiment of the manifestation of this eternal source. And in that place, it happens with ease, it happens with joy, it happens with lightness, and it takes you beyond what you could possibly know you ever were, are, or will be. So I hold that intention for you, that each moment will be an occasion, an opportunity, a teacher, a direct experience that pulls you in like a vortex or rises up within you like a wellspring that lets you hear, just like with a notebook, the beloved singing the song of you as the expression, and you remembering. If you remember in that movie, remember when she moves out of the Alzheimer's or dementia, and her eyes light up, and she begins to cry, and her whole heart, Noah, this is our calling. And in this calling is the fulfillment of all we desire individually and collectively. So with that, I want to end with one more of my poems. My lover led me down a path, my life, an expression of her, ever looking, finding her dancing among the lilies. She let me dance with her. She whispered in my ear. She held my heart. The more we whirled, the more the world changed, until I could no longer see her and no longer see me. Dark was the loss, undoing the anchors that held me safe, that gave me paper-thin perspective. Formless and tumbling, desperate calls from within reached for her. Our dance left me bereft, but the path continued. Compassion remained. Who knew it was already always within?